at Ground Zero, at the Pentagon, in a field in Pennsylvania, and all around the country. America remembers 9/11 5 years later.
This is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, reporting tonight from Ground Zero.
And good evening from Lower Manhattan. Americans across this country today remembered where they were 5 years ago today when they heard the news, when they saw those first television pictures of the flaming tower right behind us here in the area we now call Ground Zero, when the realization sunk in after that second tower was hit that this nation was under attack. We knew by the end of that day the nation was at war. We did not know where it would be fought. So today, this nation, with troops on the ground overseas fighting on two fronts, remembered that day, the lives that were lost, and the end of life in America as we had come to know it. Tonight, in a just-released NBC News poll, 42% of Americans tell us they feel safer now than they did prior to September 11th. 32% say it's about the same. 23% say they are less safe today. It all forms the backdrop for this day, and we will begin here tonight with this September 11th. Here is NBC's Mike Taibbi.
It was another sun-splashed day 5 years ago that left Lower Manhattan scarred forever, as it did a field in Pennsylvania, and the symbol and headquarters of the nation's defense. Terrorists using passenger jets as weapons to kill nearly 3,000. Remembered today by name where the towers fell.
And my husband, firefighter Dennis M. Carey.
By a son in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
My memorial will always be here and here.
And by Americans everywhere, whether serving as soldiers in Iraq or Afghanistan.
That's what motivates us to put on the uniform every morning.
Or in gatherings from coast to coast, because, as Vice President Dick Cheney put it at the Pentagon,
and when we think of them,
Americans took what happened on 9/11 personally, and still do.
And our nation will forever look with reverence upon their place, this place where their lives ended.
That pain was visible at the sites that were attacked and at places that weren't, like this memorial field on the northern tip of Manhattan. A little girl had a question. Why did they die?
It still hurts.
And the memorial's organizer, Mike Hughes, who survived the collapse of Tower 1, said he understood that family's pain to even have to confront the question.
Everyone still hurts. We still have that scar.
5 years is one of those checkpoint numbers, not just an anniversary of remembrance, but an increment of time that serves as a measuring device and a point of reference. Now, 5 years later, Americans fly differently and speak a changed language. TSA, Homeland Security, color-coded alerts. And they're not shocked when flights are delayed or diverted, as in Dallas and Long Beach, California today, because of suspicious packages that could be real threats. President Bush visited each of the attack sites. And soon, all you could see was flowers. All you could hear were the voices of those who still grieve, the mother of a United 93 flight attendant.
The pain never goes away.
A pain so many shared 5 long, anxious, and uncertain years later. Mike Taibbi, NBC News, New York.
NBC's Dawn Fratangelo was also right behind us here at Ground Zero this morning, where she spoke to some of the thousands who came to pay their respects.
They came for a glimpse of the ceremony, to see where it happened, to hear the names of those lost.
Nicholas P. Petrunti.
Allison Meeker and Lauren Memely came to be close to their college friend, Candace Williams.
You know, stop everything and just sit and just let her know and let everybody know that we miss her.
Joe Quinn came to put up flyers about his buddy, John Kelly, a police officer.
Well, I put his story on the wall so people can see that he's a real guy. They look at his face, he had a little twinkle, a little smile.
They came to walk the narrow path just above Ground Zero that has become an unofficial memorial.
They are drawn to this place, those who lost family or friends, even those who didn't know any of the victims personally. There is an overwhelming need to be here.
Marie and Phil Reinstein felt so strongly they took the day off.
You know, with sadness and anger, there really is a lot of anger. I want to fight back.
They came with bouquets and messages.
Of course, there are such things as angels. Only sometimes they don't have wings, and we call them friends.
Mostly, they came because they had to. Dawn Fratangelo, NBC News, New York.
And now to the man responsible for the 9/11 attacks. Despite a $25 million reward offer, the United States has been unable to bring in Osama bin Laden, dead or alive. Tonight, NBC News senior investigative correspondent Lisa Myers has exclusive details on the frustrating manhunt for the mastermind.
This modest building in Islamabad was for a time the target of a secret CIA operation to capture Osama bin Laden. It's the local office of Al Jazeera TV. Couriers dropped off 2 tapes from bin Laden here, offering one of the few clues to where he might be.
The only connection that bin Laden has that we know with the outside world is through video and audio tapes.
So U.S. counter-terror sources tell NBC News that the CIA mounted an elaborate covert operation to track back those tapes through multiple handoffs by couriers to bin Laden. Sources say the CIA traced this 2004 bin Laden tape back to a village in Pakistan where they captured a mid-level al-Qaeda figure, but no bin Laden. At the National Counterterrorism Center, bin Laden remains the #1 target of the war on terror. Every morning, top counterterror officials meet in this room to review the latest intelligence, including any new information on bin Laden. Senior officials acknowledge that the last time they knew with certainty where bin Laden was in real time was before 9/11. Specifically, the fall of 2000. When a CIA Predator drone beamed this footage back live from Afghanistan. The tall man in white robes is believed to be bin Laden. Recently, the search has centered on Pakistan's Chitral Valley, home to madrasas that foment radicalism. Is the trail to bin Laden cold?
I would have to say that it probably is.
This top counterterror official says the emphasis on finding bin Laden overlooks important successes.
Our intelligence has gotten better. Our operations have gotten better. So al-Qaeda, we've basically set them back on their heels.
He argues that despite 5 years of frustration, bin Laden's ability to mount attacks has been substantially diminished. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Washington.
On that day 5 years ago, our next 2 guests here played an important role in the lives of many people in this city and across the country, each for different reasons and in different ways. The leadership that Mayor Rudolph Giuliani showed on that day and thereafter led to his unofficial title of America's Mayor. Tom Brokaw was on the air for hours and then for days, telling our anxious viewers what we knew and what we didn't know. And both gentlemen have been kind enough to join us here tonight. Thank you for being with us. And Mr. Mayor, we'll start with you. The mayor of New Orleans got in a little trouble lately, but a lot of New Yorkers thought he had a point. Maybe he chose the wrong words. Is it at all an embarrassment that people who want to come to visit, pay their respects, have no memorial to visit 5 years now?
I mean, probably would be better if there was more progress that was made. But I have to tell you, Brian, you know, there are things that have happened since September 11 that surprise me and some that haven't. It doesn't surprise me that it hasn't been done yet.
Why not?
Because I knew how complicated it would be, how emotionally complicated this is. So many people have been personally affected by this. They all have their own ideas of what should be done. Some people want no memorial. Some people want a grand soaring memorial. Some people want office buildings. That I think cutting through all that has been very, very difficult. And somebody from Oklahoma City told me this. Maybe 3 or 4 days after it happens, a group from Oklahoma City came up and they said it took them about, I think, 5, 6, 7 years to sort of get it together. And they said it's going to be more complicated for you. So I wish it had been done, but I'm not surprised that it hasn't.
And Tom, as a longtime New Yorker, you know that feeling we had in those days that followed, strangers hugging strangers and applauding firefighters. How much of that is still, do you find, in the air here?
Well, I think when you come to this site or think about that day, that is very much the case in New York. New York, of course, is famous for having differences with one another and the rest of the world, for that matter. But around this they do coalesce. Now, there are sharp political differences about what's happened since 9/11, not just here, but across the country. And I think as you go across America, people who felt so connected to New York on that day feel more of a distance from it now. And like the war itself, it's complex, their set of feelings. They're a little confused about what does Iraq have to do with it? Are we making progress? How does this end? Where does it end?
Your march uptown, Mr. Mayor, in the dust, though not planned as a media moment, lifted up the city on that day. Anything you'd take back or do over was anything that you could have done differently?
Sure, if you could, absolutely. I mean, first of all, if you could have anticipated the airplanes coming into the building.
Well, beyond that.
Or even the scope of it. I mean, we had been planning for a terrorist attack for 6 or 7 years, but I don't think we ever. All the drills that we did, exercises, this was 3 times larger than anything we had planned for.
But that was a national failure of imagination.
Well, it was us too. I mean, our command center was 1/3 as large as it should be. We had to go find one that was 3 times the size. It kind of reflected in what happened with 911. 911 was overwhelmed. This is the biggest 911 system in the country. It couldn't handle that. I think the city has learned those lessons. I think Mayor Bloomberg has sort of built things out. If there is a next time, things will be 3 times larger. Now, given the way these terrorists operate, maybe next time they'll do an attack that's 5 times larger. Who knows? I mean, which is what I kind of think they're waiting for. I think they're waiting for another, what they call spectacular attack. Might not be here, it might be someplace else, but this hasn't ended. And when I was reflecting on the 5th anniversary of the attacks of September 11, I think we can fall into the illusion that this is consigned to history. This is still going on. It was going on in London, a year ago. I was there, half a block away, bomb goes off at the Liverpool station. 2 months ago or a month ago, they uncovered this plot to blow up 11 airplanes. These people still want to come back here and do it again. And whether it's a different kind of war or not, and it is a different kind of war, we are at war. I mean, but it's hard to see it and hard to feel it, but we are at war.
Tom, in the time remaining, is this the formative event of a generation? Any debate?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that. America was changed by it. It was the most serious attack on this country. But we have to remember Shanksville and the Pentagon as well. It was an attack not just on New York City, but it was an attack on all that we stand for, the Western ideals of law and modernity and pluralism. And those are the big issues. And the question is, how do we get at the roots of that rage, not just militarily, but otherwise, Ryan? That's a great challenge for this generation.
Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us.
And thank you for your coverage, Tom.
Thanks.
It was of incredible help to us. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Oh, that's very nice.
Our coverage tonight will take a break when NBC Nightly News continues on this September 11th. The remains of that day, a network television first, inside the building where they keep the Trade Center debris.
That was very sweet.
Widow, we love you and we miss you. And as I said 31 years ago tomorrow, I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. Happy anniversary, my love.
2 massive buildings now gone, and now we look at where it all went. We have a special look tonight at all the wreckage that was taken from Ground Zero. All of it sacred, and it's all awaiting a home, a permanent memorial. It's all being cared for in a hangar at New York's JFK Airport. They don't want us to show you the outside of the building, but we can say this. If you've flown in and out of Kennedy Airport, you have taxied right by it. Tonight, for the first time on network television, you will get to see what remains of that day. It's as if that day 5 years ago is now contained in this room. The violence is over and the heat has cooled, but it's all here. You can feel it, you can smell it. It's enough to make anyone angry and sad and spiritual all over again. It's an airline hangar as church.
There's no question that this is sacred ground here again, as it is down at Ground Zero.
In many ways, the symbols of Ground Zero have moved here, and that makes Charles Gargano of the Port Authority responsible for these sacred contents. In the first big room, the once mighty, once shiny outer ribs of the building. now broken, burned, and rusted, and lying on their sides. How did they have the presence of mind to mark some of them save?
Immediately when we could gain access to Ground Zero, we sent in engineers to look for pieces that we should save.
In its own climate-controlled room is the last column removed from Ground Zero. New Yorkers remember the day it was escorted out. It had been signed by the rescuers, the cops and firefighters and iron workers who needed a way to say goodbye.
It was treated like a living thing when it was removed from the site.
Alice Greenwald is responsible for compiling all of this. Curator Jan Ramirez is responsible for preserving what's here. The trains, the turnstiles, everything as it was right before life changed forever. We next enter a room containing a form that's difficult to describe. In any other museum, it could be passed off as a meteorite. And while this was born of intense heat, this is altogether different. This formation is really 4 separate stories of the World Trade Center, compressed, compacted, incinerated, exposed to temperatures as hot as the inner Earth.
I never knew this existed.
On it, you can see the typeface from printer paper, which was exposed to so much heat it carbonized.
Is this your tomb of the unknowns?
In some respect, it is.
This room conjures up the great violence of that day and the great sadness afterwards. Sadness for the men and women who built these once gleaming machines. Sadness for the men and women who were so proud to serve on board these rigs. In some cases, the men and women who died in them as well.
This ambulance apparently was incinerated.
Apart from the horrifying condition it's in, it speaks historically to the loss of the seniority in the fire department that day.
In another room, a cylinder as big as an Apollo spacecraft. That is the base of the broadcasting tower that stood atop the World Trade Center, now here on its side.
That is the base of the antenna.
This was the base, yeah.
Just past the crosses and the stars of David that the ironworkers carved from the girders is the old wooden observation deck.
Stacy Senes, McGowan, we will never forget.
Inscribed with the goodbyes of the families that lost loved ones.
Everything you have lovingly brought to this building is part of a gravesite.
You approach the work you're doing with an attitude of reverence.
All of that material, a hangar full of material, still represents less than 1% of the wreckage taken from here at Ground Zero. Much of what you just saw will be on permanent display as soon as the Memorial Museum can be built. From Ground Zero, we are back with the rest of the news of this day right after this. At the end of this sparkling day here in New York, we are back with some of the other news tonight, including a special delivery in space. The crew of Shuttle Atlantis doing a backflip 218 miles above this planet before docking with the International Space Station and making a long-awaited delivery of some new equipment there. Bermuda took a pounding today from Hurricane Florence. Thousands of people lost power, roofs and windows gave way, but no reports, thankfully, of deaths or injuries. It now appears Florence will, in fact, veer away from the east coast of the U.S., while it will still cause some high surf. And tonight, forecasters say a new tropical storm, Gordon, has formed in the Atlantic Ocean. No hurricanes threatening the Gulf Coast so far this season, which is one factor that has helped push the price of oil down. Crude prices dropped another 64 cents today to $65.61 a barrel. That's the 6th trading day in a row that prices have dropped. And on Wall Street, a quiet September 11th. The Dow was up almost 5 points on the day. NASDAQ gained 7.5 points. Another break. We're back in a moment with how some New York City firefighters are remembering their own who were lost on 9/11. As we leave you tonight, the past, the present, and the future here in New York City. Last week, we visited the firehouse they call the 10 House, the home of Engine 10, Ladder 10. And as the captain there, Captain Engel, was giving us a tour of the new fire department memorial on the outside wall of the firehouse, something the department is very proud of, we looked and saw a current firefighter quietly making a rubbing of the names of fallen colleagues, men who died on 9/11. Captain Engel says it's a sight you see often at the new memorial. And about the future, any discussion of that has to begin with the present. Here's how it looks behind us here at Ground Zero, and here's the artist's conception of the buildings that will go up to replace the towers lost and replace the void in the sky. That is our broadcast for this Monday night. We are back on the air at 9 Eastern Time for the President's address to the nation. Thank you for being with us. I'm Brian Williams reporting tonight from Ground Zero in Lower Manhattan. We'll look for you back here tomorrow evening. For now, good night from New York.